McCain he survived being shot down over North Vietnam. He endured more than 5 years as a prisoner of war. Retired Air Force Colonel John Fer was a cellmate of McCain's while held captive in Vietnam. He joins us now live from Baltimore, Maryland. And Colonel Fer, thank you so much for joining us here on the program. This is a tremendous loss.
It is. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and your memories, just how are you and how will you remember John McCain?
Well, I will remember him, first of all, as a good friend, a patriotic American who always put the nation's objectives ahead of his own. He was always, in his discussions with me, stressing serving a cause greater than oneself. I think he lived it. I think it even transcended his public life into the family. He was a wonderful family man, husband, father, and so I will always remember him for the sterling example that he set for all of us.
You described John McCain as a good friend who put service above self, and you became friends with John McCain under extreme circumstances and very brutal conditions in that prisoner of war camp in North Vietnam. What are your memories of being together there at that time?
Well, what I remember in the 2 years or so that we shared either one of the larger rooms or adjacent solitary confinement cells was that John's intellect, his understanding of what it took for all of us to work together over there to resist the exploitation for propaganda purposes, which is what we were isolated to achieve for the communists, divide and conquer, in other words, and our organization, the 4th POW, Allied POW wing, was a formalized form of resistance and being loyal to our principles and the oath which we took when we came on active duty in the military.
As POWs, you became friends, and you continued to become friends, and you kept in contact after you were released. And I was wondering if you can give us a sense of what it was like to interact with John McCain. You know, what was he like as a friend? What was his sense of humor like?
Well, in interacting with John, he was a person of vast capabilities and achievements. I used to talk with him at great length about his grandfather, his father, and their influence on his life in educating him and ensuring that he became a good naval officer, which he did. And his sense of humor was probably the overriding example of how we survived in those desolate circumstances. John could tell an anecdote. He used to tell funny stories on himself. He used to give us examples of his own self-effacing nature. For instance, let me give you an example. His second book came out, about 15 years ago or so, something like that. And I went over to the book signing, which was at one of our local bookstores, and lurking behind one of the book stacks was a lady who didn't want to be known, and so she shouted out at John as he was signing our books. He said, "Senator McCain, I understand that you're the Manchurian candidate. You were brainwashed by the North Vietnamese communists." And John, without missing a beat, shouted out to her, "Yes, I am." And he went right back and signed the books and continued on his way. So, you know, he could just let it all run off his back. He could turn it on himself. He used to quote Damon Runyon and some of the things that he wrote on about Broadway and the nicknames that Runyon gave to some of his characters and things like that. So, you know, he was a very lighthearted man, yet he could be serious, as you know, on the floor of the Senate.
Colonel John Fer, thank you so much for joining us here on the program, sharing us your memories of John McCain and the life, as you put it, the sterling life of this man, John McCain. Thank you so much for joining us, and take care.